Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we're going to be dealing with a pretty crazy situation involving this individual named EvilToaster, who is a Paper Frog VTuber and also a Twitch ambassador. Now, I'm going to give you a too long didn't read version of events before we get into the details of everything. Basically, this individual tries to take credit for a very disliked Twitch feature that has been recently released. He gets angry at the criticism, kind of melts down, and then people start digging into their account, and eventually a 57-page Google Doc is dropped on them. Somewhere in there, there's a lesson, I'm sure. But let's begin with this part right here. So, innocently enough, this begins with a new Twitch feature that was released, and it's called the knock feature. Basically, what this does is allows people to make like a one-sided invitation to other people's streams. They can pull up to your stream and use the knock feature to say, so-and-so wants to collaborate with you, and it pops up in your chat. Only the streamer can see it, but you see that someone is requesting to collaborate with you. Now, this has been heavily disliked. People don't like this. Number one, it's not necessary. Like, if you want to collaborate with someone, figure that out on your own terms and on other platforms before stream. And also, it puts people in a very awkward position. It seems like this is a very invasive practice where people can send you these requests and it puts pressure on you. It's a one-sided invitation that you got to make a yes or no decision on the spot. And some people would look at that and say, declining that might make me feel like I'm being rude in the situation. So it puts a little pressure on them to say yes to a collaboration they might not want to do in the first place. And on top of that, as Shiloh here points out, this feature is not something you can opt out of. Everyone on Twitch has this feature now, and also none of the filters are automatically applied. You have to do it yourself. So literally anyone can send you this knock request and try to collaborate with you, which can obviously be misused. It's invasive, and you can harass and annoy people with this. And if you apply the correct filters, only people you add as a favor can do that, but that's not how it is initially. You have to go and set that for yourself. Now, perhaps not reading the room, Toaster would go on to Twitter and basically claim responsibility for this tool coming to life, saying this: "Now when people ask me what does being a Twitch ambassador mean, I can say I told them to make this feature and they actually hecking did it." They actually hecking did it, Reddit. Did you hear that? But anyways, eventually in the replies, Toaster would tag Zentreya from VShojo, and these two seem to have some sort of a friendship. They collaborate a lot together, especially in recent months. And little did Toaster know that before they tagged Zentreya, Zentreya had already responded to the main post promoting this feature, saying this: "I think this is a very intrusive and dangerous thing to add onto the platform, and it can be used maliciously. I think I see what the idea was, but this was poorly and hastily executed. I would 100% say to remove this and go back before it's misused inappropriately or worse." So clearly big disconnect right there on how to view this feature. But anyways, you could see the criticism because this feature was getting dogged on by everyone, even impartial people reporting on this, saying this is a horrible update. And you can see that it's starting to get under Toaster's skin here, right? They're very proud of this feature, but everyone's dunking on it. You can see this reply here, very passive-aggressive, saying, "You can literally just set it to favorites only and add no favorites, bro." And then here, they would go back to their original thread and add these comments that a lot of people have been critical of, saying this: "Muted this a while ago because I ain't subjecting myself to y'all's brain rot. But if it wasn't obviously clear, me telling Twitch, please add better features for collabing and making collab organizing and communication easier is not the same as me deciding how exactly that is executed," and then saying this: "And the amount of people saying, no one asked for this, bro, none of y'all asked for anything. You actually need to grow on Twitch because you have no idea what you're doing. Collab content is proven to be extremely effective, but you refuse to engage in it because you're terrified of people." Yeah, not a very good look for a Twitch ambassador to be saying these things. I mean, on the one hand, they're right. You know, collabing can help boost your career and your growth, but that should be your decision. You should be able to decide if you want to collaborate with someone. It should be like a two-person agreement, not just one person shooting out a request live on stream that you have to decide on the moment whether to say yes or no. And this seems to be a reflection of boundary issues. And they don't really seem to understand that, but they kept getting criticized, especially for this tweet. It seemed very passive aggressive and snarky, basically saying all these people don't know what they're doing, but I know what I'm doing. And they would go live and they would title their stream "Guy Who Literally Ruined Twitch," obviously mocking the situation and any of the legitimate criticism people had, especially in the VTubing scene. This was a hated feature in the VTubing scene, and clearly they didn't read the room and they didn't like the results that came from the criticism. But they would also have a lot of tweets dug up from their account that kind of explain why they would like this feature so much. So back in July of this year, they said this, referring to the online status on Discord: "One time I actually checked, and no joke, less than 5% of VTubers in my friends list have online enabled. The status means nothing to me anymore. Crazy thing is I still don't get DM'd ever, even with a green light and putting 'please DM me' in my status, so it doubly means nothing." So you can see why they would like the knock feature when they already have this issue with people setting boundaries with their statuses, basically saying, don't interact with me right now. Either they have an offline status or a do not disturb. They are setting a boundary saying, I don't want to communicate with people right now, and that makes Toaster upset. So you can see, again, why they would like the knock feature so much. It forces an interaction on someone who might not want it. And on top of that, you can see this very attention-seeking behavior with the please DM me in their status. Like, it's just kind of odd. And also, one of my viewers was able to discover this. So they say, "Can't believe that your idiotic addiction to Twitch is what made me discover you condone the Hogwarts Legacy harassment campaign," which, are we surprised? So here is a section of tweets. You can kind of read it for yourself, but they're basically shooting down any of the excuses or justifications people are making for playing this game. But this is the one I really want to look at. This is crazy. It says, "I don't know if I'm in the mental state to be the kind of person to go and personally call out people for playing the topical wizard game of the week. But bro, let me tell you, if I see anyone I know stream that game, that will be going in your folder." Yeah, that's nuts. If you have folders on your friends, crazy. You need to log off immediately. You are taking this stuff way too seriously. Imagine being friends with someone and you commit the high crime of playing the wizard game, and all of a sudden now that is going into your folder that they have about you, the list of grievances and supposed wrongdoings you have done. That's a very strange practice to have. But shortly after those tweets started flying around once again, you can see this Google Doc being dropped by a VTuber named Sierra. Now, this is a very extensive document talking about some of EvilToaster's behaviors behind the scenes and also in public, and you can read the disclaimer for yourself on this document. There's two things I want to lay out here. Number one, for brevity's sake, we are just going to highlight the most relevant parts of this document. And on top of that, there is no criminal stuff, or at least something that looks criminal in this document. It is much more of an attempt by several people who have interacted with Toaster to share their experiences with him. And mainly the main highlight of what they're all saying is that he has no concern for boundaries. People set boundaries, he keeps pushing past it, whether it's romantically or through just many different ways. It seems very apparent, and it explains again why they wouldn't understand the criticism of the knock feature. So let's begin with the main poster of this document, and they're sharing this part regarding intimacy and boundaries, where they say, "One of the first things Toaster will tell anyone is that he craves affection, mostly from women, from what I've seen." So this is a screenshot of her conversations with Toaster. So to explain what's happening here in the context, apparently they were talking and it became much more flirtatious between them. And Cece here says, hold on a second, I have a relationship with a boyfriend. I don't want to mess that up, so let's not go any further with this. And immediately Toaster responds with this, saying, if we got too close and you wanted more, we'd both have to deny ourselves something we'd want to explore. Which is odd after they just said, I don't want to explore that. And then she would basically repeat that. And again, he would reply down here saying, I'm just thinking it would be a shame if it came to a point where we would have to hold ourselves back. Again, repeating the same thing that goes beyond what she wants. And then again, she says, I just hope you don't devalue me as a friend because I'm, limiting our connection here. Where Toaster replies again, saying, but the connection beyond just being respectful as content creators is so far very unique. And it's hard not to want to explore, basically going beyond just being friends and obviously something romantic or sexual or what have you. So you can see they get these boundaries placed by someone else, and they constantly keep pushing past it. They keep trying to go past it, even if they are hearing what the other person is saying. And here's another example from an anonymous user where I think this will explain a lot going forward. So apparently this person opened up to Toaster, shared a lot of personal stuff, and said, oh, you might be going to the same convention. If I see you at the convention, I would like to give you a hug. And that gets pushed. So first of all, they respond with apparently some personal information about a completely unrelated person. But then they say not just that they would want to hug this anonymous person, they would also want to cuddle, which is obviously escalating the amount of physical contact. Like most people hug their friends, but they don't cuddle with their friends. I mean, it's obviously something additional where they ignore that. The anonymous person ignores that and tries to basically ignore any of these additional things. And it seems obvious that they just want to move on in the conversation and not have this different direction they're going, where they then repeat again that they would love to cuddle them and also tell them how pretty they are. Now, I think a lot of this has to relate to this tweet. I think this tweet is pretty telling, but I'll explain more why this goes even deeper. So this is a tweet from back in July referring to conventions, just like the one they were trying to meet up at. It says, every convention is another reminder that I'm not one of the girlies, and I'm never gonna get the kind of treatment and affection they give each other, even though I try to connect with them. I've gotten better at dealing with that fact over time, but it still hurts to think about. So number one, I'd like to remind you, I'm pretty sure this is a guy in his 30s, and it's a tweet that looks like something a depressed teenager would make. So yes, it's cringy. Like this tweet seems cringy because they're saying I'm not one of the girlies and all this stuff. But with this context, some additional screenshots from personal conversations, this kind of extends upon what they meant by that previous tweet, which I think gives it a much more serious and odd twist. Okay, so what they're saying in the DMs here is number one, saying that they're not escaping the man class position, which is something I would expect a male feminist to say, right? They're saying that they can't, I guess, escape the perception that they are a man. And they are curious about how things would be different if they were perceived as a woman. Where they go on to say, which is just going to make me think more about how things would be different otherwise. Who would I be closer to? Who would let me tell them more of my feelings? Who would let me touch them? There's so many instances of this just seeing in front of me throughout my whole life where people I'm genuinely good friends with will stop me at a point where they let women they know go past. Can you wrap your mind around that? That's a very weird thing to say. So coupling this with their previous tweet, basically what they mean by saying that they're sad they're not one of the girlies is that they believe if they were perceived as a girl, they could go further than the boundaries being set by these girls they're trying to fit in with. So they say, oh, I have a boundary where, for example, they don't want them to touch them. Well, if he was perceived as a girl, they might let him touch them. And on top of that, with this whole thing, it directly says pretty much where the point where they're stopped now, they might get past it if they're perceived as a girl. So like I said, coupling the tweet with this personal explanation makes a pretty weird standard, I would say. On top of that, you can just see like random screenshots like this. I think they're pretty telling, like constantly talking about girls and being lonely and trying to kind of fit in with the girlies, so to speak. But here's another tweet, this user sharing their own story alongside the Google Doc here in the replies to that tweet, saying, this person named Kimmy saying, I already put out my experiences with Toaster before, probably not in the best way, but I've been badmouthed for siding with an abuser simply because I didn't choose sides when two people I knew were going through a dispute. I was guilt-tripped and given ultimatums. I asked for proof as I was being made to choose between friends, one very new and one I'd known for a long time, but that just made me apparently side more with an abuser. And I read through these chat logs here, and basically Toaster was saying that this person was very abusive towards them, this friend in question, and basically said, you need to make a choice. It's me or your friend, and you got to make a choice. And this Kimmy person responds by saying, can I have some proof? Like, I would want to know what they're doing, where they, instead of giving proof, say, oh, well, you've picked a side. You picked the side of an abuser. And obviously that's a very serious thing that you can label someone as. And also they point out that around that time, they also lost a lot of mutuals and connections and was pretty much outcasted. And that is a concern a lot of people have raised in terms of their way of dealing with Toaster, because they are pretty connected. They collaborate with a lot of VShojo members and other big streamers. So they're concerned that if they disagree with Toaster or they have some kind of a falling out, it might hurt their connections as in terms of their career. But also you might have noticed this section right here, and this goes a lot deeper than you might ever expect. So it says, I was also told numerous times to get tested for autism as I showed signs. Yes, this is the thing we're going to see repeated with multiple people. Here's another example from the original poster of the Google Doc where Toaster is talking to them and says this, do you often examine your ability to appear and interact as a normal human? They're like analyzing them right now. And then down here saying, Sierra, do you have ADHD? And then after that, they send them a bunch of tests to see if they're on the spectrum. What friend does this, by the way? Like, forces these tests onto someone who doesn't seem to want to take them and doesn't feel comfortable with these labels being attached to them. Obviously, like, I will make this very clear. There's nothing wrong, obviously, with having autism, but falsely labeling people as having it and continuing to push it onto people when they don't want that is weird. And that's, again, another boundary push. Here's another example of them referring to someone else as autistic, also saying that they passed the hot people test, referring to the test for it. And on top of that, someone, an anonymous person, was apparently venting about insecurities, where Toaster replied with this, well, I have great news for you. Almost all the other VTubers are autistic too, implying that this person is autistic when they are not. And on top of that, there's a very long conversation here, but to sum it up essentially, Toaster says someone's head is empty. He enforces his own thoughts on what this person should do to a chatter, gets his mod team involved, and then questions why this person isn't loving towards him, but is to others. He also openly talks about how this person is autistic to someone else, even though the person in question is not diagnosed or identifies with this diagnosis. And here's another one saying, well, I'll listen along, you're autistic as heck, where the person says, no. So yeah, you see this common thing of them constantly labeling people as autistic, even if they're not, and they feel comfortable doing that. However, they are policing others for things that I think are far less serious. So there's an individual who had a falling out with Toaster, and it had to do with comments they made on stream. They were in a collab, and these two girls were making jokes that are a part of their communities, their shared communities, and one of them was talking about how the one girl is psychotic because she's short. It's a joke they're both comfortable with. It's something that their communities are fine with, but Toaster had a big issue with this on stream and even carried this into private, where the person in question would profusely apologize, where Toaster would say, no one likes mental health related jokes. I added you in the chat earlier about PTSD jokes too, where they again apologize saying, yeah, sorry, I didn't fully understand it at first, and that's my bad. I'm used to different humor with others, but I am really sorry. And they were probably saying, you should really be concerned about those others. So they do all that stuff with the autism and the labels on people, but then someone makes a joke about being psychotic, and they're getting the finger wagged in their face, and they're getting shamed in private, and the apology isn't even being accepted, and they're making them feel bad and guilty about these other people they've used different humor with in the past. And here's another claim where they're trying to police, Toaster was trying to police other people's behavior, and this is quite possibly the craziest one. So this individual says, years ago, he would minority police me to insane standards. I was in a dark place at the time, stuck in an abusive relationship. And if I showed frustration on stream to the extent of, man, where is my team? Nothing vile, he would send DMs, not asking, hey friend, are you okay? But rather giant essays on how I'm a disappointment to the community, how I'm letting people down, people of color, gay folks, and more importantly, making him look bad to his sponsors that he once recommended to me. He's thrown me and several friends of mine under the bus with this sort of behavior, and funnily enough, it's always been minority streamers. There was a PMA police energy around him with his crew, which spits in the face of authenticity because, God forbid, minorities be anything less than perfect and happy all the time. And we would see another claim about power dynamics, and we saw kind of some people hinting towards this, that because Toaster is well-connected and an established creator, people were afraid of speaking about anything because they might burn bridges and he might go out and talk badly about them. And we see some of these examples here, like this one, where he's kind of dangling a collab opportunity with Zentreya and kind of shaming this person for wanting to play some other different game, because if they played this certain game, then they could get the collab. It was just like a very strange thing, and I understand why people would be afraid of upsetting someone in a position like he has. And here's the conclusion, I mean, pretty much wrapping up what we talked about here. And I think the one section here is pretty interesting, where they're talking about how their Toaster plays like a perpetual victim, that their identity and how they're perceived is ruining their chances for developing relationships and all these things. But in reality, it's because he keeps pushing boundaries and making people uncomfortable. And that's why people distance themselves from Toaster. So there's no boogeyman going around trying to demonize you and ruin your life. You're doing that on your own. Now, a lot of people in that document also said there is a very low chance he's going to publicly address anything, even though there's thousands upon thousands of likes on the Google Doc and also related tweets criticizing him. And this is his latest tweet. It looks like he's gone dark. It's been 2 days since he's tweeted anything, and all the replies are basically saying, bro, you messed up. Are you going to say anything? And yeah, we got radio silence. So at this point, I don't know if we're going to hear any responses, but that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys were informed on some things, and as always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.